ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Oh yes it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gon' come. Oh yes it will. Then I go to my brother. I say, brother, can you help me, please? But he winds up knocking me down on my knees. Oh, there've been times when I thought I couldn't last for long. Now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know the change gon' come. Oh yes it will. Oh I know the change gon' come.
Hello and good morning. I'm Bruce Langston, a member of this congregation since 1996, and humbled and privileged to be your worship associate this morning. On behalf of our lay leader today, Shelley Negrani, music director Alex Peach, video editor Mark Sewell, and the many members of the congregation contributing, including Valerie Rivero, lighting our chalice in her first week as a member, I welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Metro Atlanta North Congregation, a church home we affectionately call UUMAN. UUMAN is a liberal religious community and a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Our faith and values are exhibited in our 7 principles. 2 of those are worthy of consideration in the context of today's service, I think. Our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And our second principle, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. I'm delighted to welcome those visiting with us online this morning. If you're interested in learning more about our congregation, please send an email to membership@uman.org. Whoever you are, wherever you're from, whomever you love, and wherever you are on your life or spiritual journey, we are glad you're here, and we look forward to getting to know you. Challenged in this era of COVID-19 to meet new people, we're being creative. We invite all to join us after the service at 10:45 this morning for our virtual coffee hour on Google Meet. I'll type the link into the chat. You'll also find it at uman.org on the homepage. For more information on upcoming events, click the upcoming events link at uman.org. Now, take a moment to quiet yourself. Take a deep breath and clear your mind. be here now in this virtual space with each other and prepare for our service. The call to worship this morning is a quote from Yvette Clarke, daughter of Caribbean immigrants who has served as a U.S. representative for New York's 9th Congressional District since 2013. We must never forget that Black history is American history. The achievements of African Americans have contributed to our nation's greatness.
Today's chalice lighting comes from 7 principles of Black lives. Principle number 1, all Black lives matter. Queer Black lives, trans Black lives, formerly incarcerated Black lives, differently abled Black lives, Black women's lives, immigrant Black lives, Black elderly and children's lives. All Black lives matter and are creators of this space. We throw no one under the bus. We rise together.
Today's story for all ages is told by Patrice McLaurin, read by Shelley Negrani. Have you thanked an inventor today? This world is full of inventions. Some of them we don't even think about. But if we took the time to think about them, we'd realize we wouldn't want to live without them. You see, inventions, they make our lives much easier. They also make our lives more fun. So we should thank the inventors who invent great inventions, for without them, we might not get anything done. Like, for instance, when your mom wakes you up in the morning to let you know that it's time to go to school, you stretch and yawn, rub the corners of your eyes, and probably wipe away last night's drool. That's when you happen to glance over at your clock and realize that you're running a bit late. Well, you wouldn't know that if it were not for Benjamin Banneker, who invented the first clock in the United States. So you put on clothes and you rush into the bathroom, you wash your face and brush your teeth, then brush your hair. Well, you should thank Lydia Newman for part of your morning grooming, as the modern day hairbrush was her awesome idea. Afterwards, you're called into the kitchen for breakfast. This morning, it's cereal with fruit and wheat toast. Well, thank goodness John Standard improved the refrigerator because hot milk with your cereal is pretty gross. And when you're on your way to school, whether you're a bus rider, a car rider, or you walk, you have to thank Garrett Morgan for the traffic light. Otherwise, none of our streets would be safe to cross. Then, after you've settled into your classroom and you've taken out your supplies because you're such a scholar, please remember to show love to Mr. John Love, for his invention was none other than the pencil sharpener. Now, as much as I know you love to learn, you'll admit that sometimes lunch is your favorite time of the day. Well, you can thank John Robinson for your lunchbox, but for what's inside it, it's your mom or dad that you need to thank. And what does mom and dad usually pack in your lunchbox? Tasty snacks that make your belly go yum, like peanut butter made popular by George Washington Carver, or potato chips invented by George Crumb. Fast forward, the school day is over. It's been a long one, and you're happy to go home. You check the mailbox, invented by P. Downing, then chill in front of the air conditioner, invented by Frederick Jones. Plus, your teacher didn't assign any homework, so you decided to play a few games on the cell phone. Well, if it wasn't for Henry Sampson's gamma electric cell, believe it or not, there would be no cell phone. And these are just a few of the awesome inventions. There are countless other ones that I didn't even mention, like the doorknob invented by O. Dorsey, or a type of guitar invented by Robert Fleming. Sarah Boone invented the ironing board, and Thomas Stewart invented the mop. Lonnie Johnson invented the super soaker, and W.A. Martin the improved lock. So now here's what I want you to do. I'd like for you to take a moment or two and ponder over how life would be if these inventions weren't created for you. Then, as you lie in your bed in the evening and you think about how your day was spent, don't forget to thank an inventor. Then, dream about what you'd like to invent.
Now is the time in the service when the love that joins us together is spoken aloud. If you have a joy or a sorrow you would like to share, please type it in the chat. Miriam Patanian is happy that her mother received her first vaccine dose this week and is scheduled to receive her second in mid-February. Miriam and her family are looking forward to finally being able to spend time with her mother in April. And I'll drop a final pebble for all those joys and sorrows not spoken aloud. May we keep each other in our hearts until we're together again.
Praise Song for the Day by Elizabeth Alexander. This poem was read at Barack Obama's presidential inauguration. Each day we go about our business, walking past each other, catching each other's eyes or not, about to speak or speaking. All about us is noise. All about us is noise and brindle, thorn and din, each one of our ancestors on our tongues. Someone is stitching up a hem, darning a hole in a uniform, patching a tire, repairing the things in need of repair. Someone is trying to make music somewhere with a pair of wooden spoons or an oil drum with cello, boombox, harmonica, voice. A woman and her son wait for the bus. A farmer considers the changing sky. A teacher says, "Take your pencils, begin." We encounter each other in words spinny or smooth, whispered or declaimed, words to consider, reconsider. We cross dirt roads and highways that mark the will of someone, and then others who said, "I need to see what's on the other side. I know there is something better down the road. We need to find a place where we are safe. We walk into that which we cannot yet see. Say it plain, that many have died for this day. Sing the names of the dead who brought us here, who laid the train tracks, raised the bridges, picked the cotton and the lattice, built brick by brick the glittering edifices they would then clean and work inside of. Praise song for struggle, praise song for the day, praise song for every hand-lettered sign, the figuring out at kitchen tables. Some live by love thy neighbor as thyself, others by first do no harm or take no more than you need. What if the mightiest word is love? Love beyond marital, filial, national, love that casts a widening pool of light, love with no need to preempt grievance. In today's sharp sparkle, this winter air, anything can be made, any sentence begun, on the brink, on the brim, on the cusp. Praise song for walking forward in the light.
One historical figure left out of the school books is Bayard Rustin. The following are excerpts from a piece written about him by Henry Louis Gates called "Who Designed the March on Washington?" If you had been a bus captain en route to the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in August of 1963, you would have known who its organizing genius was, and you wouldn't have been surprised to see his picture on the cover of Life magazine a week later. Yet of all the leaders of the civil rights movement, Bayard Rustin lived and worked in the deepest shadows, not because he was a closeted gay man, but because he wasn't trying to hide who he was. That, combined with his former ties to the Communist Party, was considered to be a liability. Still, whatever his detractors said, there would always be that perfect day of the march, that beautiful concentrated expression of Rustin's decades of commitment to vociferous but always nonviolent protest. It was, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, the, quote, greatest demonstration for freedom, close quote, in American history. And it is why I ask that if you teach your children one new name from the heroes of Black history, please let it be Bayard Rustin. There was no lonelier man in Washington, D.C. at 5:30 a.m. on August 28, 1963, than Rustin. He had predicted a crowd of 100,000 marchers, and with only 4.5 hours to go before the meetup, he had his doubts. Would everything he had been working toward pan out? Would the coalition hang together? Would the march remain peaceful, thus defying the 4,000 troops President John F. Kennedy had ready in the suburbs? Bayard Taylor Rustin was born in Westchester, Pennsylvania on March 17, 1912. He had no relationship with his father, and his 16-year-old mother, Florence, was so young he thought she was his sister. From his grandparents, Jennifer and Julia Rustin, he took his Quaker values, which, in his words, quote, were based on the concept of a single human family and the belief that all members of that family are equal, close quote. He helped to launch the Congress of Racial Equality in 1942. 2 years later, he was arrested for failing to appear before his draft board and refusing alternative service as a conscientious objector. Sentenced to 3 years, he ended up serving 26 months, angering authorities with his desegregation protests, and open homosexuality to the point they transferred him to a higher security prison. Once released, Ruskin embarked on CORE's 1947 Journey of Reconciliation, an early version of the Freedom Rides, to test the Supreme Court's ruling that any state forcing segregation on buses crossing state lines would be in violation of the Commerce Clause. It was a noble attempt, but Rustin soon found himself on a chain gang in North Carolina. As part of his deepening commitment to nonviolent protest, Rustin traveled to India in 1948 to attend a World Pacifist Conference. Mahatma Gandhi had been assassinated earlier that year, but his teachings touched Rustin in profound ways. Quote, "We need in every community a group of angelic troublemakers," close quote, he wrote after returning to the United States. Quote, "The only weapon we have is our bodies, and we need to tuck them in places so wheels don't turn," close quote. In 1956, on the advice of labor leader and activist A. Philip Randolph, Rustin traveled to Alabama to lend support to Dr. King and the Montgomery bus boycott. While remaining out of the spotlight, Rustin played a critical role in introducing King to Gandhi's teachings while writing publicity materials and organizing carpools. The idea for the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom came from A. Philip Randolph, who wondered if younger activists were giving short shrift to economic issues as they pushed for desegregation in the South. In 1962, he recruited Rustin, and the two began making plans, this time to commemorate the centennial of the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. Rustin traveled to Alabama to meet with Dr. King and expanded the march's focus to jobs and freedom. From the march's headquarters in New York, he looked forward to leading the planning coalition of the Big Six civil rights organizations: SNCC, CORE, SCLC, the National Urban League, the NAACP, and Randolph's Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. But Roy Wilkins of the NAACP refused to allow Rustin to be the front man because of his sexual orientation and his past association with the Communist Party. As a result, Randolph agreed to serve as the march's director with Rustin as his deputy. Their challenges were manifold: unite feuding civil rights leaders, fend off opposition from Southern segregationists who opposed civil rights, fend off opposition from Northern liberals who advocated a more cautious approach, and figure out the practical logistics of the demonstration itself. On the last point, Rustin later said, quote, "We planned out precisely the number of toilets that would be needed for 250,000 people, how many doctors, how many first aid stations, what people should bring with them to eat in their lunches," close quote. The march itself, of course, turned out to be a tremendous success, including those glorious moments when the official estimate of 200,000 was announced. Actually, there were as many as 300,000, according to Life magazine. When Marian and Mahalia sang, when Mrs. Medgar Evers paid tribute to, quote, "Negro women freedom fighters," quote, when John Lewis and Dr. King spoke, and when Bayard Rustin read the march's demands. And perhaps the most poignant statement of the power of nonviolence was that there were only 4 arrests, all of them white people. Afterward, the leaders of the Big Six met with President Kennedy at the White House. Rustin remained out of sight, though he and Randolph did make it onto the cover of Life, September 6. 8 days later, 4 young girls went to their deaths in the Birmingham church bombing. In November, President Kennedy was gunned down, leaving President Lyndon Johnson to shuttle the Civil Rights Act through Congress, signing it in 1964, the same year Dr. King received the Nobel Prize, with Rustin planning the logistics of his trip to Oslo. It was, to say the least, history at its most dramatic, shocking, and unpredictable at every turn. I close with a quote by Mr. Rustin that will resonate with all UUs. Quote, "The principal factors which influenced my life are 1. Nonviolent tactics, 2. Constitutional means, 3. Democratic procedures, 4. Respect for human personality, and 5. A belief that all people are one."
Maya Angelou was one of the most influential people of our time. She held many roles throughout her life, including poet, memorist, novelist, educator, dramatist, producer, actress, dancer, historian, filmmaker, and civil rights activist. She was born Marguerite Annie Johnson on April 4, 1928, in St. Louis, Missouri. She spent her growing up years in Arkansas. While life was not easy, especially since she became a single parent as a teenager, she used the tough parts of life as inspiration to write and touch the lives of others. In 1960, after meeting civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. and hearing him speak, she and novelist James Killens organized the legendary Cabaret for Freedom to benefit the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the SCLC, and she was named SCLC's Northern Coordinator. In 1962, she and her son moved to Ghana, where she became an administrator at the University of Ghana. During this time, she was also the editor for the African Review and wrote for the Ghanaian Times. While in Ghana, Maya Angelou met Malcolm X. She returned to the U.S. in 1965 to help him build a new civil rights organization, the Organization of Afro-American Unity. Soon thereafter, however, Malcolm X was assassinated. In 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. asked her to organize a march, and she agreed. Before the march could take place, King was assassinated on Maya Angelou's birthday. Devastated by the grief of losing another dear friend and beloved freedom fighter, Maya immersed herself in her art, writing, producing, and narrating a 10-part PBS series on blues music and the Black experience in America, and her famous first autobiography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Maya Angelou published 7 autobiographies, 3 books of essays, several books of poetry, and is credited with a list of plays, movies, and television shows spanning over 50 years. She received dozens of awards and more than 50 honorary degrees. Still I Rise is one of her better-known poems. Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may tread me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries. Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wonderfully clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise.
Many people say the most important thing they get at UUMAN is community. We all get because we all give. Our time, our talent, and our treasure. Now is the time we ask you to share your treasure. To support the work of UUMAN, the morning's offering will now be received using the Givelify app or at uman.org/donate.
The sound of hope, the sound of peace.
Before we extinguish the chalice, let's think together about principle number 7 from 7 Principles of Black Lives. Principle number 7, 360-degree vision. We honor the past struggles and wisdom from our elders. The work we do today builds the foundations of movements for tomorrow. We consider our mark on future generations. We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.
The benediction this morning is a quote from Maya Angelou. Won't it be wonderful when Black history and Native American history and Jewish history and all of U.S. history is taught from one book, just U.S. history?